She believes her greatest accomplishment as ambassador was her role in the process that reduced tensions with North Korea.
To be able to pass the strongest sanctions in a generation that brought the world together and brought North Korea to the table.
Haley also threw some cold water on widespread speculation that she was thinking of running for the White House in 2024.
The only decision I've made right now is that I'm looking forward to sleeping in.
She spoke on NBC's Today Show.
After dumping more than a foot of snow from Washington to Colorado, the same storm system is now making its push east. Numerous states are under flood, snow, and wind alerts as the storm moves in the southern plains today. The system is not expected to move much Friday, but the rain ahead of it will spread into the southeast, which is the area which was just hit earlier this week with all the heavy snow and ice. This is USA Radio News.
Hi, I'm Wayne Allen Root, the conservative warrior. My show War Now airs every day right here on USA Radio from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm also the star of the Wayne Allen Root Show on Newsmax TV, reaching over 50 million homes. But my favorite role is speaker extraordinaire. I was opening speaker at many Donald Trump for President events. I speak at Republican, conservative, and college GOP events, and I'm available to be the star at your next event. Contact me to arrange for a Wayne Root keynote speech. Call toll-free 888-444-ROOT. That's 888-444-ROOT. Or email wayneroot@gmail.com.
Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, in his farewell address, warned colleagues that the upper chamber of Congress, where he served for 4 decades, is in crisis. Warren also believes
things weren't always as they are now. I was here when this body was at its best. I was here when the regular order was the norm, when legislation was debated in committee, and when members worked constructively with one another for the good of the country. I was here when we could say without any hint of irony that we were members of the world's greatest deliberative body. The bar of decency has been set so low that jumping over it is no longer the objective. Limbo is the new name of the game. How low can you go? The answer, it seems, is always lower. When we heed our better angels, when we hearken to the voices of virtue, native to our very nature, we can transcend our tribal instincts and preserve our democracy for future generations. This is a final floor speech, not a final goodbye. 3 weeks from now, I will no longer hold office, but I will continue to hold a special place in my heart for all of you.
Hatch, who's 84, is retiring this month after serving in the Senate since 1977. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
It's 29 degrees. It's 3:05.
It's time for the Dianna Ploss Show. A Boston native, an American patriot, a political activist, a serial entrepreneur and medical professional, an American football fanatic, and a disco music enthusiast, and never afraid to have a conversation. She'll start that now. Your host, Dianna Ploss.
Good afternoon, everybody. What a day today is. I am so excited. I feel like it's Christmas, Hal. I do. I feel like it's Christmas. I'm so excited and honored that you're here with me today.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
I have 2 hours of your time.
Well, let's hope to make the most of it.
We will. And we're going to have a lot of people on the line because people have been asking me questions since I said that you were going to be on the show today to talk about Agenda 21. So I want to let people know this is the Dianna Ploss Show on WSMN 1590, and I'm here every Thursday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. A lot of people are listening on the Dianna Ploss live stream right now, but you can also listen on WSMN1590.com, and you can also listen in the radio, 1590 AM, and you can get the show there. But again, we will be taking questions and answering questions from people on the live stream today. So we have an exciting show all around globalism, Agenda 21, and my very special guest today is Hal Shurtleff. Hello, Hal.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
I'm thrilled. You have, I was looking you up.
Uh-oh.
I looked you up. You are very busy. You're busy. You have 4 kids.
5, actually.
Sorry, 5 kids. Did I miss one? What happened? Did something happen
my
last
oldest.
time I saw you?
Oh, no. Oh, my poor wife. No.
Okay, so
I'm expecting a grandchild, though. That's what happens.
Congratulations. No, that's awesome. But you're so busy. So you're the director of Camp Constitution.
Yes.
And at some point during the show, I will put your link up on the live stream so people can see that. You're also, you manage, correct me if I'm wrong, Mass Coalition Against Agenda 21.
Well, I'm one of the.
I mean, that's what it said, Hal.
Yeah.
I'm going right from.
That's good.
Right from the internet. It must be true.
It must be true. It says
must
on the
be
internet.
true. And then this tricky one, Clorpa. Do you pronounce it Clorpa?
Clorpa, yeah, that's a Facebook page. That's that was a Massachusetts. I don't think it went anywhere, but it was a massive Agenda 21 type legislation.
Right. Clorpa stands for Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnership Act.
Anytime you see the word partnership and comprehensive, don't walk to the nearest entrance.
Because you know it's a lot. You
know it's bad.
It's funny you say that because you.
Or the word initiative. When initiative is put in there too.
You always or infrastructure. You always hear these big words from politicians, and it means nothing. They're all lies. But you also manage Vermont Friends of the Constitution.
Right. Well, there's about 15 Facebook pages that I manage one way or the other.
In your spare time.
Well, that's what I do full time, and the YouTube channel, and I'm also one of the directors of the National Heritage Center for Constitutional Studies, which is New Hampshire based.
That one.
And we just had a meeting at the State House. That's why it was kind of.
That's where you were today.
We had a nice lunch with a friend of yours, Pastor Garrett Lear, and his lovely wife Kathy.
Oh, good.
And
wonderful.
We had a great conversation. I said, I got an hour. I better buzz down here. So
I better zip down there. You didn't get pulled over, huh?
No, I didn't get pulled over.
No, good.
I was going above the speed limit, and people are passing me, giving me dirty looks. So I figured they'll pull them over before they pull me over.
What is the speed limit in New Hampshire?
65, most of the way. You know, 55 here, 65.
Yeah, 55 seems slow, doesn't it?
It's like crawling. Yeah,
it does. And when you get to be 55, you seem slow, right? I know that personally. Okay, so we are jam-packed show today, all about centered around Agenda 21, globalism. At 3:30, do you know Arthur Schapper, Mass Resistance?
I know Mass Resistance very well.
Okay, so he'll be calling into the show to talk, just to update us on something that's happening in Canada.
Okay.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, Brian Kamrick is a long-time friend.
Exactly, they work together. Yeah. So Arthur works out of California.
Oh, okay.
So he'll call in. So he is the organization director of Mass Resistance. So he'll call in. So all of these things are all connected. And then at 4:05, because we take a break from 4 to 5, we have Mark Allegro who will call in. And this is going to be very interesting because this is right up your alley, right? Article 5 convention?
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Well, that's on the Article 5 of the Constitution, calls for 2 ways to amend the Constitution. One of them is through a convention.
Oh, a convention of states.
Well, that's a term that's been used recently to identify a Article 5 convention, but it's not a convention of states. It's a convention of delegates from the states, but they're not beholden to the states, and that's the big issue here. One of the big issues why it's a bad idea.
Okay.
I mean, when you have state conventions, they don't call them conventions of the towns, do they?
Oh, right. That's a good point.
What do they call them? They call them state constitutional conventions because they're dealing with something called the state constitution.
Okay.
It's not a constitution of the counties, you know.
Okay. A constitution that everybody seems to be trampling on nowadays.
Yeah, and people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, historically have done that. So it's not just the Republicans are just the good guys and the Democrats are the bad guys.
Right.
So,
I tell people this all the time because they'll go after the Democrats, right? And right now, do you think it's the globalists versus the nationalists?
Well, global internationalists, for example, the late George H.W. Bush, when he announced his Operation Desert Storm, he said that I want congressional approval, but I'm going to a higher authority. That higher authority in his mind was not God, it was the UN. The UN is not a higher authority under our Constitution, but people with his mindset believed that the UN was a higher authority. See, the UN gives us, the UN Security Council passed a resolution authorizing military intervention, which is against their charter too, by the way, but who cares? I mean, you violate the Constitution, violate the UN Charter. When something written by a communist, anyway, you don't expect to be adhered to, right? Because they're not supposed to interfere in internal squabbles. And anyway, so he said, I'm going to a higher authority, meaning the UN. And today we have all these UN police actions. And you look at the constitutions, find me the word police action in there. It's not in there.
Right.
And that's part of the globalist mindset, that they put the interests of the international so-called community first, and the United States last.
Well, above the interests of the individual countries.
That's right.
Right. So I have a slew of questions for you.
Okay.
So the first thing, because it's confusing, I use the words globalism, Agenda 21, and New World Order as if they're the same thing. Are they the same thing?
Well, they're elements of the same thing. Agenda 21 is a way to bring about a new world order.
Okay.
But Agenda 21, the term New World Order is not a new term. We can trace it back to H.G. Wells had a book called New World Order. Wendell Willkie wrote an essay called New World Order. Or I think it was called World Order. The Nazis had a world order, but of course their world order was maybe not the same as the UN wants, but it's still an all-powerful entity. And so we actually trace it back to before the early 1900s, the term New World Order. And I'll never forget when Daddy Bush mentioned it in his speech. He actually, when he mentioned the speech at a joint session of Congress.
You can see it on YouTube, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Still on YouTube.
Oh, in fact, we put it on our Camp Constitution channel. And he said actually there was about 100 times when he said the term in a speech. And so I don't know if all 100 are up there or not, but he said, we finally have a chance at this new world order. And then he defined it as a UN as envisioned by its founders. So now you have to ask the question, who are the UN's founders? Well, they were a man named Alger Hiss, who wrote the charter along with a Soviet national.
Can you spell that? Is it
Alger, A-L-G-E-R.
Oh, Alger. Is he Islamic?
No, he was upper middle class WASP.
Alger.
Yeah.
Alger.
Well, Horatio Alger. I can't remember. I did read a biography of Hiss, but I can't remember where the name came from. But Horatio Alger was a character in a novel. It was a great series of how to be successful. Capital free market system and hard work. And anyway, his last name is Hiss, H-I-S-S. He was the first. SS would be appropriate. The last two.
Right.
He was actually a communist agent, a Stalinist agent. And thanks to Whittaker Chambers, he was outed. Unfortunately, he couldn't be tried for treason. He was tried for lying under oath and served a couple of years in jail. But he was also at Yalta, the meeting between Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill, just before it was in March of 45, towards the end of World War II, when basically Churchill, he was there as an advisor. So you have a Soviet agent advising an American president, and he must have taken his advice because Stalin got most of Eastern Europe, all of Eastern Europe, and there were about 5,000 refugees that had fled the oncoming Red Army, the Communist Army, and these people were promised that you'd be safe, they wouldn't be, and most of them were put back in the hands of the communists. Some were women and children were raped and murdered, worked to death, what have you.
Whatever they feel like they can.
So that's the caliber of man who wrote the UN Charter. So I tell people what good can come out of the pen or the mind of a man who would betray his country the way he did. And most people have never even read the UN Charter. And I tell people it's diametrically opposed to the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is supposed to protect rights, God-given rights. The UN is no reference to God, and it's implied that rights come from man or from government. Yeah, and if you look at the UN Charter, not the UN Charter, but the UN, it came out a few years later, international document, where it talked about that you have the right to vacation time.
No, sir.
You have all these wonderful rights, but then in the next paragraph,
the Charter of Human Rights, that one.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Yeah,
only because I just Googled it.
The international, 1948 International Charter of Human Rights. It would have come on my mind eventually, and it said you had the right to a vacation, the right to travel, the right to this, the right to that. But then you go down a few paragraphs. It said unless there's a law against it or it's in violation of the UN. Any of the principles and what have you of the UN. So you have the right to religion, but if that religion is not favored by the people in power, you lose that right. You see, we're in our country.
Christianity is being attacked, Judaism being attacked.
That's right.
So let me ask you this question though: if Bush said this in 92, Bush Senior, you're telling me that nobody on Capitol Hill who heard him or wherever the speech was given, nobody's eyebrows were raised?
Well, it's interesting. If you watch one of the videos, when he says the term New World Order, behind him, it's the Vice President, Dan Quayle, I think it's the Speaker of the House. Was it Foley at the time or
Listen,
Mitchell?
this is above my pay grade.
Anyway, they both looked like they're on some type of psychotropic because they're sitting there without an expression. I can imagine if I was sitting there, I'd be jumping out of my seat. You know what? You know, but that term I was familiar with for many years, long before that. And it's almost like Bush let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. And then they asked, where did that term come from? And you might find this on the internet too. Well, he was with Brent Scowcroft, one of his advisors, and they were out on their boating on in Casco Bay, up in Kennebunkport. They came up with the term New World Order, and it was my friend John McManus who said, "You get rid of the Kenny and the port. What do you get? You get bunk," and that's what it was a lie.
It was a bunk.
They didn't dream it up. It's an old term, and it always meant some type of world government.
Right, and it says world, but isn't that something that you would be charged with treason if you're following the UN's constitution or charter versus the one that you were elected to support?
Treason is giving aid and comfort to the enemy,
okay,
or warring against your country. So. It's a tough charge to stick with somebody. The late David Rockefeller wrote his autobiography 2004 or 5, and in that he said that, and it's not a direct quote. I don't have it in front of me, but paraphrasing, he said that there are people on the radical right and radical left have accused me and my family of being part of world government, international conspiracy, what have you, Bill One World Order. He said, to that, I plead guilty and I am proud. Now, that would be enough to convict him.
I don't even understand that.
He's admitted it. And now all of the media back then, 05 and 04, you think they would have said, hey, this is something more important than maybe guys kneeling in a base at a football game, or parties being canceled at the White House. I don't remember any talk show host, any of the mainstream conservatives even mentioning it. It's taboo. You're not supposed to talk about this stuff because when you do, you're called. And a lot of these talk show hosts, well, I've known over the years, they'll say, hey, it's bad radio, and it's just something we don't want to talk about.
It's bad radio.
That's what they say. I mean, the idea of the radio is to fill that, if it's a talk show, right, fill that, make sure those little red lights are on, and make sure the advertisers are buying time on the radio. And other than that, that's really what it's about.
Wow.
But there are certain topics that just won't talk about. And I remember the Harvey Carr show. This was back when we went into Bosnia. Remember we were bombing? Oh, was it Haiti? Well, some UN mission. And he said, I can't understand this. Why are we doing this? So I called in and I said, Howie, it's very simple. In 1945, Congress passed a law, an unconstitutional law, that was called the UN Participation Act. And in that bill or law, President Truman signed it in, at any time the UN Security Council calls for soldiers somewhere in the world, we have to supply them. And that's why we had a Korean War.
Wow.
We had Vietnam was fought under a UN entity called SEATO, S-E-A-T-O, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, like NATO. Now it no longer exists. So we fought under basically UN dictates. That's why victory was never the objective.
UN.
We are still in Korea. And Vietnam, we lost. I mean, it was called Peace with Honor. I remember Nixon.
We lost a lot of.
He said Peace with Honor. Yeah, 56,000 or so men, and then the ones that came back with all kinds of problems and what have you that still dealing with today.
Right.
And all for what? You see, they weren't supposed to win. The first Gulf War. I know General Schweikart. He was the man.
Yeah, I remember him. That I remember.
And I remember that he wanted to go into Baghdad, and then they sent him back home. Nope. He said, "You're not supposed to win wars, don't you? Didn't you get the memo?"
That's ridiculous. So I want to be able to talk to the live stream because there are a lot of people on live stream. Give them a shout out. So I just want to let you know you're listening to the Dianna Ploss Show. My terrific guest today is Hal Shurtleff, who wears many hats. Are you the direct?
I'm wearing headphones right now.
I'm wearing headphones and a hat.
That's right.
And my Trump hat.
I do have my Liberty University hat, though.
If you feel like you want to put that on, God bless you.
No, but it's a little chilly
here. You put
here.
that on.
That's
but
okay.
I am going to put up when I get it. I'll get the link for you're the director of Camp Constitution. I encourage everybody, whatever link I put up for Hal, go to his Facebook page and like it. Make sure you like it.
The Camp Constitution.
Because you will get very informative just in the few short minutes. You're an encyclopedia.
No, I don't know about that.
You are. That's my opinion. My opinion counts. It's my show.
Well, most encyclopedias they throw in the trash now, right?
No, it's my show. I can even use the word encyclopedia. So let me just say, we have Christine on the line. We have Shirley. We have Vonnie Trump. So please let me know where you're watching the Dianna Ploss Show from, and you could ask your questions of Hal, and I'll do my best. I will do my best to get the questions to you. Okay. So let's get, I just want to go back. The New World Order is the idea of what they want. Mm-hmm. Agenda 21 is the plan to implement it.
Well,
is
Agenda
that right?
21 was something that came out of an event in Rio de Janeiro in, it was June of 1992.
Okay.
92, I think. It was 92.
Anything to do with the UN?
Yeah, a lot to do with the UN because it was sponsored by the UN.
I was being facetious.
I know. And there was leaders from around the world were there, including George H.W. Bush. The Beach Boys were there. Al Gore was there. John Kerry was there. And I had a friend of mine that was there as a journalist, one of the few patriotic journalists there. And he said that he mentioned there were greenies and commies and reds, and there were diapered swamis.
What's a swami?
Well, some type of mystical person. They were doing some kind of weird dance. And he said he saw the same diapered swamis at a conference in Europe. It was either before or after. It was another type of UN conference. So I guess they have it, rent a swami, you know. You bring them in. I mean, when you have unlimited funds, you can take the 5-star hotels, you know, and you know, bring
the private jet,
fly people in,
the private
jets, fly people in. And there was several things that came out of this. One was the biodiversity treaty that was shot down, thankfully. And my late friend, Dr. Michael Kaufman, a shout out to him, his memory. He played a key role in that. The other one was a protocol, a climate change, acid rain or climate change.
I remember not acid rain.
Yeah,
I remember that, though. That I remember. Rain.
Some type of climate protocol that was not, and then Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a 40-page document, which is what we would call soft law. So when we criticize it, they'll say, oh, it was just a meaningless document. Well, you don't get world leaders from all, you know, they weren't throwing balloons out of the hotel windows and having a big party. They were there for business.
Right. Meaningful. It was meaningful.
In fact, soft law can be more dangerous because what happens is it comes back to the countries, and Bush signed on to it, as well as everybody else there. So they pledged to adhere, to change the policies in their countries to conform with the policies.
Isn't that treason?
Well, I mean, the word treason is
what other word would you use?
A foreign entity is advocating this, and it's supposed to. The tenets were population control because there's too many people in the world,
which is what we have,
which means
right?
abortion and sterilization.
Yep.
The other one was the climate change. That the
Paris Accord.
The CO2. Well, this was before the Paris Accord. The CO2s had to be reduced. So because you had too many people, and you had to deal with that, and also education. So every chapter deals some facet of our country, the fishing industry, the agriculture, everything that deals with people.
Everything that we see is happening is that.
There was a little Agenda 21. It was a smaller, what you call a crib notes on Agenda 21, and the guy David Sittard, who wrote the foreword to it, he said something to the effect that the implementation of Agenda 21 will be binding on all people in the world. Every single human being in the world will be adhered to.
Binding will be binding.
Yeah. I mean, right? That's everybody, not just no
that's
option
not
here.
Maybe.
Yes.
Could be.
So President Clinton becomes president. He has the White House Council on Sustainable Development. That's one of their buzz terms.
Sustainability.
And they hired the American Planning Association to come up with a way to implement it here in the United States. You know, take the 40 chapters and make it a little smaller. And they, it was so many millions of dollars. They came out with Towards Sustainable America. You can find a copy of that PDF version online free of charge. Yeah, free of charge.
I just posted it.
And I think there were 8 things in there. And one of them was population stabilization. Now, that's an interesting term, right? Population stabilization. Not just in the United States, but in the world. So the goal of that, the Clinton administration, was to implement population stabilization all over the world. And, of course,
that means no growth. Or
that's right.
The amount of people that die and the amount of people that are born are even.
That's right.
Right? Isn't that what that means?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear on that.
Now, we all know the late oceanographer who had a television show, Jacques Cousteau. Now, everybody loves you. I remember as a child.
Watch it all the time.
He was a World War II hero, a French Navy veteran, submariner, and he pioneered a lot of technological advances. So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff is he was one of these wacky greenies, and he was at that conference in 1992. Oh. Prior to that, you could find this online too. He was interviewed by UNESCO Courier, which is a publication of the United Nations Education, Science, Cultural Organization, a very wicked entity. When people say, oh, the UN is just a waste of time, they're harmless. Well, I wish they were harmless. They were just a waste of time. But in the interview, and it's clear, it's not something that, you took it out of context. He said that we have to have 140,000 people every day have to die. He said it's a terrible thing to say, but it's even worse.
It says it right here.
Yeah.
It says it right here.
And I mean, that didn't make any headlines. That didn't make any. I didn't see the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald, the National Telegraph. And when you write a letter to the newspaper, you quote that and say it comes from a UNESCO publication, you're a conspirator. Well, no, I'm simply repeating what was said by this man.
And it says, I'm going to post what he said.
Now, the granddaddy or the daddy of Agenda 21 was a man named Maurice Strong. He just passed away a few years ago, living in China, where good place for him, where his worldview is accepted. He was at one point he was a pass clerk at the UN. He was basically a security guard. So he worked hard, went to night school, and worked in convenience. I'm being facetious. He met David Rockefeller, and before you know it, he's a multi-billionaire oil man, big New Ager, big advocate of this New Age movement, which really is kind of this New World religion that dovetails, because Christianity believes in absolutes, Judaism absolutes, so no place for this monotheistic religion in this New Age, New World order here. So that stuff has to go out the window. And Maurice Strong, he was interviewed by a man, David, I'm trying to think his last name. This was Canadian, David Strong. No, I can't think of this guy's name. David.
We'll just call him David, like Cher.
He was a Canadian journalist, and he's spending a day or two with him. And this was prior to the conference at Rio. And he said something to the effect where he's just ruminating, I'm writing a novel, he said. And he said, it's going to be about how we're going to collapse the world economies to save the world, And this poor guy is looking at this, and he's thinking, this guy can do it. This guy means to do something like that. But at the Rio conference, he's one of the keynote speakers, and he said, I want you to tell me who you think the biggest threat to the world is, according to Maurice Strong, in 1992. What would you think the biggest threat to the world?
At that time?
Nuclear proliferation or,
That's what I was thinking.
The American middle class.
Wow.
And he went on to say, because of their consumption patterns. So most of you people listening to this show probably are in that group or want to be in that group or like being middle class. And he said, you have these are all the bad things. Single family homes.
Single family homes. So I just want to slow down for a second. We are going to be getting a call any minute from Arthur Shopper. So I just want to know, but I want people to pay attention to these things because,
by the way, I couldn't make this kind of stuff up. I don't have this much of creative imagination.
No, because you're a historian. But no, seriously, I want people to digest. You're talking about meat.
I think his name was David Wood. So
David Wood. Yeah. But I want people to be able to digest this because this is what we see in everyday life. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm trying to get across to people. So I just want to let you know who's watching. We have people from Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, North Dakota, Puerto Rico. So they're all watching the thread.
I've been to North Dakota, Fargo.
Really?
Yeah,
I haven't. Yeah. That was a movie.
It's the least, at that time, it was the least visited state in the Union.
Really?
Yeah.
So I wonder what they're doing with refugees in North Dakota. So I just want to see. I'm just looking. So we have people. Vonnie Trump says, Hal, you sound logical and credible.
Well, thank you, Vonnie. Tell your uncle I appreciate. That's
Vonnie Trump. It's Vonnie Trump from Puerto Rico. What do you want me to tell you?
Oh.
We have Alan from Ohio. We have Roger says open borders ushering in the African third world so aggressively into civilized Western society will lead to civil war. So that's one of the other things. We also have Mississippi, Brenda from Mississippi on the line. So, okay, we're going to wait for Arthur to call in. And while we're waiting, so you said You want to get rid of the middle class because
I don't want to, but
not you,
yeah,
but
Maurice Strong.
Right. Maurice Strong wants to get rid of the middle class, and this is why I want everybody on the thread, everybody, and people who are listening. This is what is happening, and you'll be able to put it all together. So, because the middle class consumes too much.
We have single-family homes.
Single-family homes.
We drive those dreadful internal combustion engines.
Called a car.
We even cut our own grass with lawnmowers that use gasoline.
Yeah.
We like to eat red meat.
Red meat, and it costs a lot. You know, cows have to eat a lot of grain to produce that meat. What else do we do?
And then you have, let's see, what else do you have? So it's the red meat. Oh, it's air conditioning.
Oh, air conditioning.
And
heat.
It's also heat. You're burning oil or gas to keep warm. So this is all a big no-no. And so we have to reduce our standard of living.
So you have to reduce the consumption. And the only way to do that is to reduce the middle class.
That's right.
Right. And so this is what I'm trying to get across to people. And if I'm not explaining it, or if Hal's not explaining it, please let us know, because this is the crux of it.
The other thing is to get the populations out of the rural areas and compact them into the urban areas. And that's something you
see it right now.
Your focus is basically these buildings popping up in a lot of different cities and towns. We use the term stack them and pack them. Maybe the zoning laws have been changed to accommodate something that maybe would have generated maybe an acre. You could build so many units, and now you have 5 times as many units.
Right. Whereas you used to have to be able to have. I just want to tell people the show, the Dianna Ploss Show on the radio, which you're listening on the radio, you're listening at your place of work, or you're watching and listening on the live stream. We're live from New Hampshire, but Hal and I both live in Massachusetts. Okay. Right. And there are many people who are watching this across the country. By the way, Nashua,
the last time I checked, is a member of an entity called ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiative. And I think they still belong. You can see some evidence. There used to be a storefront called Renaissance Downtown. And they were an organization that is hired by the cities and towns to how do we implement Agenda 21. It was about 6 years ago. We had an outreach on a Saturday morning. I was organizing some people right in front of City Hall.
Up here in Nashua?
Yeah, we had signs, ICLEI, get out of ICLEI, stop Agenda 21. And we sent out a news release, and I got a call from a union leader reporter. And the union leader reporter says, well, I spoke to the mayor and some selectmen, or you call them selectmen here, or city councilors.
Hell, I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, I can't. Anyway.
What the hell are you thinking?
What was I thinking? So he said, well, I spoke to so-and-so who's a selectman or city councilor, and they never heard of it. I said, they have now. That was the whole reason why we had this outreach. I said, well, you should know if something's happening in your town or city. You should know the dynamics of this. And the fact is you're paying for membership. You're getting their software, and you're applying some of their things as suggestions. You're implementing some of the things they're suggesting. And you're probably getting federal money from HUD.
Exactly.
And you're getting money from the the regional planning commissions. In fact, Granite State Future, it's the Future of Futures, is headquartered here in Nashua. And that's the granddaddy. That's all of the, they work with all the regional planning commissions in the state to implement Agenda 21.
So that's interesting. So something just popped into my head. I think the way I had met you, right, at an event in 2016. Is that the first time I met you? Was in Boxford or something?
Yes, it was Boxborough, and it was the Reclaim Massachusetts event. Jeff Kuna hosted.
Yeah, but that was the event. John O'Mara. That was his event, right?
He passed away.
He passed away, right? A week or two before. So it was Mass Coalition to Elect Trump. That was his group.
Okay.
Right. So I had met you for the first time, but what happened is, if I remember correctly, because I had been driving a lot in Massachusetts, especially on the North Shore, and I saw all these buildings come up along the commuter rail, and I'm like, something's up. I didn't know what it was, and I ended up getting directed to you, I think. Somehow. Okay. I think that's how it happened. I ended up getting directed to you.
Because you would ask me about Agenda 21. Right, what's all this stuff going on?
I didn't really, not that I didn't believe it, but I didn't believe it. Because how can you believe it?
It is kind of,
it's nuts.
It is.
But it
can be hard to grasp.
It is. And so that's why I want to try very hard to help people understand.
But let me point out, too, that most of the people that are implementing this
are not middle class.
They're decent people.
Oh, I see. Yes,
they're not two-headed monsters. They're not UN troops undercover that want to kill us. They're our own neighbors and friends and people like that. So, a lot of them are ideologues. Some of them are making good money out of it. I mean, the Green Mafia is making tons of money, and some people are just motivated by the money. You know, if you're a builder, you want to build in a certain town or city, you better go along to get the contract.
But they're carrots, and I'm going to talk about Dogtown in Gloucester. I don't know if you know what's going on, but I want people, as you're listening to the show, to think about the middle class and what has been done over the last few years, especially under Obama, right? One of the biggest things was Obamacare. The middle class got hammered.
Sustainable medicine.
Right. Middle class got hammered. Now, the other thing is, think about the opioid epidemic. Last year, 2017, over 70,000. That's more than in the Vietnam War. Died. Think about that.
That's right.
Think about that. And the majority of people who are dying are...
By the way, that doesn't include suicides by drug addicts or when they go to the hospital
and they die
They die in the waiting room.
Yep. Or they die from an infection.
That could be another. That's right. So that could be another, 10 to 15, maybe 20,000.
And if you look at the percentages of people that are dying, they're white.
And they're young.
That's our future. So this is an attack on the middle class. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. If you have your questions, please put them on here. Okay, so I asked you about Agenda 21, globalism, New World Order. Are they the same? No, but they're connected. Okay, so if I call the governor of Massachusetts, I always call him names, but if I call him a globalist, is that does that fit? Like, am I using globalism in the right term? Because he's pushing this. He's pushing Agenda 21.
I would say that. Or I use the term internationalist, but you could say globalist.
Well, which hurts the most? I heard he doesn't like to be called a progressive.
Then I call him
he hates being called a progressive.
I hate the word progressive because progress is when things are usually getting better.
Yes.
I mean, if I lived in a house with a leaky roof and the sides coming down in a patch of weeds, and I put grass and put a new roof on, that's progress.
Right.
That's better.
This is regressive.
But socialism is not progress.
Right. So even if I call him a communist, people argue. I'm just trying to find the right word.
Well, see, when you use the word communist, well, does he belong to the Communist Party? No, he doesn't belong to the Communist Party, but if his worldview lines up with the Communist Manifesto, then you can use the word Marxist. I don't know if I'd call him a Marxist, but I definitely know he's a leftist.
Right. And the thing is, what this all means, though, is basically we are getting pushed. Agenda 21 is pushing everybody towards socialism/communism. Right? Is that right?
And by the way, we've had that long before that was a meeting in Rio de Janeiro. We were
going in that direction.
We have been going right along. Right. We talked about acid rain a little while. You mentioned a little while ago. That was the big scare. Acid rain, and what was the other one? See, the acid rain.
Greenhouse gases.
No,
that was one of them.
Let's see, the acid rain was gonna kill all the trees, and ozone hole. Ozone hole.
Yeah,
we were all going to die. Of course, they know ozone, you need the sun. And, of course, in the Arctic, it's dark all year, so there's not much ozone. And I don't know the last time I went suntanning in the Arctic in whatever month it was. But people got scared, and we need to give the government more money, more control to pass bills to outlaw the hairspray,
the aerosol.
That was
oh, my goodness. My aunt, this is a funny story, but my aunt Kathleen passed away about, say, 10, 12 years ago. Anyway, she used Aquanet. That was the hairspray back then in the 70s, right? So she used Aquanet, so her hair didn't move. It was like hurricane proof. And my mother, when she passed away, my mother said, I know it was that Aquanet that killed her. And I'm thinking, she smoked every day of her life since she was like 10.
A lot of times it's our own personal experiences which lead us away from the socialist plantation that I really, thankfully, was never on. But I remember the former governor, Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts, gave a press conference in a little pond in the town of Milton, Massachusetts, which abuts Boston, Turner Pond. And he said, this pond is dead because of acid rain. Now, I had taken my oldest daughter when she was a toddler, taken her around there on a nice afternoon. And I thought, what a shame. This is really too bad. Oh, about 4 months after that, I went back to Turner's Pond, and guess what people were doing there? They were fishing, and guess what they were catching?
Fish.
You got it. So we've been lied. I said, someone's been lied to. I think Dukakis was lying to people.
No, a politician that lies?
Never happens, right?
Can't
First
be
time.
so.
Then I remember hearing about the the maple syrup crop in Vermont. The maple trees were dying because of acid rain.
That's right.
And I remember an article from the Boston Globe, and it had to be true because it came out of the Globe. You know, it was going to be true. And it said the article talked about tomahawk markings on some of these trees, which means it was going back to when before the white man came to Vermont.
So we have to preserve them.
Well, the first thing I thought was, I said, well, trees die. They live a long time, but they usually die, and then that's why you got to plant new stuff all the time. Well, a couple of years later, I'm in Vermont, and they pick up a local newspaper. Now we're talking maybe 4 or 5 years later. And the article said the largest maple syrup crop in the state's history, not according to the right-wing extremist wacko, but according to the United States Department of Agriculture. I said, I wish I had kept that article from the Globe, But when I talk to the people in Vermont, they say, you dumb flatlanders will believe anything.
Flatlanders, is that what they call us?
I said, I didn't believe it. Yeah.
Well, so you bring up a good point.
Well, you know what Flatlander comes to Vermont? You know how you can tell?
How?
The maple syrup buckets are attached to a telephone pole.
I get it. That was funny. I don't know if the audience got it, but that was funny. So I wanted to tell Masha Belmont, I think you're on the live stream thread. I don't have a shirt with me, but Masha, you won a genetically deplorable T-shirt from the Dianna Ploss Show. So when you get a chance, send me a Facebook message, Masha Belmont, and let me know your size and your address so I can send you out one of those genetically deplorable T-shirts that you've seen. My guest today is Hal Shurtleff, and it looks like maybe Arthur got tied up because he's out in California. So that's okay. We'll get Arthur on the phone again. But apparently what's going on in Canada, I don't know if you read the story. I don't know if I forwarded it to you, but there's a member of the Canadian resistance, like we have mass resistance in America, and they have, I guess, Canadian or
there's
Canada.
One in Texas, I think.
They have them in every state. They have
little Brian has been busy.
Brian has been busy, and he's from Massachusetts. So apparently, this member of the resistance up in Canada is getting sued for like millions of dollars because he's speaking out for pro-family and he's speaking out against transgenderism. So he's being sued for a lot of money. Well, let's hope that we can get Arthur on the show next week to talk about that.
Well, there was a pastor in Canada that was passing out basically Bible tracts.
Him.
Yeah.
That was him. His name is, I have it written down. Keep talking.
And it was just, it wasn't saying, I hate just group like that group. It was what traditional Christians believe. He was arrested and treated pretty badly, given a jail sentence for hate speech. See, Canada is not the free country that a lot of people think it is. In 1968, they passed a hate crime or hate speech.
They're trying to do that here.
Now, hate speech is really any speech the left hates, right? That's what it is. So they'll say, oh, we're all for free speech, but not hate speech. And hate speech can be anything that gets you upset. And, sometimes you're going to disagree and you're going to get upset. But, but in other words, they want to just silence certain people. And it's a very generic, a vague term. What's that? So I knew a gentleman who since passed away. He was a book dealer. And he had a book. It was the memoirs of Cardinal Menzetti, who was a Catholic priest that was jailed by the communists, I think it was Romania. And it was basically his story of how the communists treated him so horribly, tortured him, tried to destroy his faith, and he wouldn't relent. There's a Cardinal Menzetti Foundation that people can look up. And he couldn't sell the books. There was a Catholic bookstore over the border from Niagara over the border, and he couldn't bring them in. They said these are banned. So he would actually have a little motorboat and go across the Niagara River and get them in anyway. There was a book published in 1972 by Gary Allen called None Dare Call a Conspiracy. He had a co-author who happened to be Jewish. And that was deemed hate speech, even though there was a 2 or 3 page disclaimer saying that we do not adhere to any anti-Semitism. We are not promoting, there's no Jewish conspiracy. We denounce this. That was still considered hate speech. And this is Canada.
Oh, Canada.
That's right.
Okay, so the pastor's name, I have it here. Keep talking. I have it here. Oh. I have it here.
So, yeah.
So it says, I'm sorry, it says human wrongs perpetrated against Christians in Canada. So let me ask you this question. Is the persecution of Christians like we're seeing, Christianity, mangers that we can't put up anymore?
In the Western countries, it's not as vicious as it is in communist countries or Muslim countries, but there's still persecution. In fact, in Germany, it's illegal to homeschool.
I did not know that.
Oh, it's illegal. In fact, the Nazis, you know, when the Nazis were taken out of power, there were certain laws that they decided to keep, and that was one of them, banning homeschooling, because Karl Marx spoke against homeschooling too in the Communist Manifesto. And there was a couple that left Germany, came here, and during the Obama administration, and they were going to send them back to face jail time. I think because of the outcry, I think they eventually got refugee status. But here was
in America.
In America, which, yeah.
So this is Bill Whatcott, and that's his last name, WHATCOTT, one word. So it says he's been simply telling the truth about what he believes, right? Defending natural law and biblical morality on a range of subjects, both in open forums and undercover. So that's what's happening in Canada. Lots of stuff happening.
Well, I just read about one of our crazy U.S. members of the House of Representatives in Massachusetts. She wants to sponsor a bill that would that abortion is a right, and to speak out against it would be a crime. I thought I just got the email yesterday from the Massachusetts pro-life Massachusetts for life.
He's looking at the look on my face. He's like, should I stop or should I continue? But the same thing's happening in Europe. They're saying that if you speak out against the migration,
you're a racist.
No,
you're a hate crime.
It's crime now. It's a crime.
The United Nations has this treaty on genocide, and for the longest time, the United States didn't sign it, and I think we signed it. I'm thinking it might have been under Bush the Younger. Now you say, why would you be against a treaty on genocide? No decent person, regardless of whatever, you shouldn't want it. But they have some very vague terms for genocide. There's genocide going on in South Africa, but no one seems.
They're pushing. Right, it's the same thing. They're pushing. They're taking the land from the whites and they're killing them.
They don't care about it because they're killing Christians, and I guess that's okay. Right. They're killing Christians in the Sudan, but that's okay because they're Christians, so it's not an issue. But they defined it even, and this is where the genocide comes in. Let's say that when I first read about this, Jesse Jackson was in the news a lot. He had this run for president, and now if I went out and said the reason why I don't like Jesse Jackson is here, nothing to do with the color of his skin. That's not an issue, but because he's advocating things I disagree with. That could be, and then people hear that and they get angry with Jesse Jackson and they want to go out and beat some black people up. So that's genocide, according to this crazy UN treaty. So genocide is trying to wipe out a group of people. That's clear-cut genocide. Advocating it. The president of South Africa, he'll sing this song about killing the Boers. The Boers are the colonists from Holland, the Dutch. They've been there almost as long as the Pilgrims are in Plymouth. And there's about 4 million of these farmers that one time was Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa were the breadbaskets of Africa. Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, thanks to in part by the United States under, it was Kissinger, they got the ball rolling under Nixon and Ford, that country was turned over to a communist, a hardcore communist, and the country is a disaster. It's a failed country. The same thing's happening in South Africa. And Mandela was a Marxist. He was a communist revolutionary.
And people say a lot of good things.
Oh, I know they do. And all they do is you go onto Google Images and put Mandela hammer and sickle, and you'll see a picture of him with the head of who's now deceased too, the South African Communist Party, with a clenched fist and the Soviet flag or the Russian flag behind him.
The clenched fist, is that the one they have it up like this, or just down like
up like the clenched fist? Yeah.
And we see that in the streets and protests,
that's right?
With the Antifa and everything.
You go to an Antifa Facebook page, they're not trying to hide their affiliation. You're going to see that old Soviet flag with the stars, and the hammer and sickle. They're not hiding it.
It's not the stars and the stripes.
No, it's not.
It is not. So I just want to give you a plug because we have about 10 minutes before or 9 minutes before the break. So my guest today on the Dianna Ploss Show is Hal Shurtleff. He's director of Camp Constitution. I'll put that link up.
CampConstitution.net is our website.
CampConstitution.net is the website. I'll be able to
and
just plug that right in.
And you can learn about our wonderful family camp, which takes place next July to early August. We have a great lineup of instructors already, including Professor Willie Soon.
Oh, we have to. Is he coming back to your program again?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I want to talk. I would love to get him on the show.
Oh, you'd love.
He is fantastic.
Yeah, he is
fantastic. But I also want to say that you would. Can I call you an expert on Agenda 21?
Well, you know the old saying, "In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king."
Okay,
I wouldn't call myself an expert.
It's the Dianna Ploss Show, so I can say whatever I want. He is knowledgeable, very knowledgeable, extremely knowledgeable.
I'm knowledgeable on it.
He's knowledgeable on Agenda 21. So he's my guest today, and we're talking about that. At 4:05 after the 4 o'clock break, Mark Allegro will join us. And this is going to be interesting because you know a lot about the Constitution. Mark knows a lot about the Constitution. And we're going to talk about Article 5.
Okay.
All right. Article 5 Convention. Did I say it right? Did I say it right?
You said it right.
Okay. So I will keep putting your links up there. I want people who are listening to couple things. We give assignments to people here on the Dianna Ploss Show. One is let us know where you're watching the show from, and two, if you have questions, put it on the live stream link, and I can ask Hal. I'll ask them on air so we can get as many questions as possible. Because the goal of today's show is to let people know. I want people to be able to see when they go out their front door or they listen to the news that they can see that Agenda 21 is being implemented all over this country.
Right. By the way,
over.
Let me give a shout out and a plug to Mr. Tom DeWeese of the American Policy Center.
Somebody asked if you know him.
I know him very well, and in fact, I'm kind of partnering with them and to do presentations on the subject. But Tom is the man when it comes to that subject.
Okay,
and
so
his website's full of great. We have some good stuff on our website as well, and we have some great videos on our YouTube channel on Agenda 21. And I traveled throughout the region, and I'll look for evidence of Agenda 21 and have short little video clips, of here it is in Nashua, here we are, here and there, wherever.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. So your website was campconstitution.net. I want to put that. So I encourage everybody to go back down the thread after the show, and there are a lot of links that I put on this thread that will be very helpful for you to all understand. So we have somebody watching from Elk County, Pennsylvania, says, keep up the great work. That was Mike. We have Greg from, I don't know if I pronounced this right, Ukiah, California. Does that sound right? U-K-I-A-H. Okay. We need to talk about apartment buildings and how they're connected to Agenda 21, because people tell me all the time on social media that I'm nuts, that I'm making this stuff up. What can you tell us in 6 minutes?
Well,
about
not all apartment buildings specifically, but a lot of the new developments, and you'll see them around commuter rail stations, rail to trail, and active commuter rail stations, and you'll see them relatively small units, densely populated, not a lot of parking because they don't want
you to have a car.
And in fact, just around the corner from my home in West Roxbury, it used to be an American Legion Hall, but Knights of Columbus. One floor. They tore it down, and they've got a 3-floor, about maybe 12 units. Forest Hills, which is a section of Boston.
Unbelievable what's happening there.
I call the architect, I call it neo-Stalinist. It's just these horribly looking, ugly buildings. They slap them up, and they're supposed to be green. Now, green buildings are sick buildings. Why? Because a building
There's no air.
You got to get air.
Get air.
They'll make it so, and then they also the toilets they're putting in. Well, you don't want to flush toilets because you're wasting all this great water. So they only give you, I don't know, a gallon or so, and so you got to flush it 5 or 6 times, and so you're actually using more water. It makes matters worse, not better. And a lot of them, in fact, West Roxbury section of Boston, there was a developer having a hearing. This was a public meeting, not a hearing at this. And there was a group called West Roxbury Saves. They're not talking about saving money, they're saving the planet. And they're demanding that they build a carbon-free building because we have to meet the goals of Agenda 2030 or Agenda 2050 or whatever it is, whatever agenda they have. Whenever they change, they have to rebrand it every so often. Well, the only way to build a carbon-free building is not to build it, because you can't. Even the materials that go into it, and the maintenance of the building. And, you build solar panels, you have to clear out, you have to clear, I don't know how many acres. That stuff is made from hard earth materials.
Right.
And it's nasty. And once they deplete. I mean, they don't last forever. And by the time you've kind of broke even, you got to buy new ones.
Right.
Or you get a big old wind turbine and you got to clear cut a mountain or a hill. You got to put transmission lines back, up and down, and access roads, and then you have to, You're going to kill a lot of your birds, and then it's dangerous because you get that low frequency. If you live too close, you're going to get sick.
Right.
And if it's in the wintertime, if you live in a northern temperate zone, you're going to get ice buildup, and you're going to have a giant slingshot of ice coming at you. I mean, all kinds of those things break all the time. They catch fire. And if you have a forest fire and you get that wind turbine, it's
like we've had in California.
It's like a bellow. Now, I don't know about if the wind turbines had anything to do with the fire. I don't know.
Right.
But it's another way. It definitely can help fuel a fire.
Right. But the bottom line is Agenda 21 is about controlling us.
That's right.
And so when it comes to
also plastic bag bans, straw bans, and those evil plastic bottles from spring water, those wicked, horrible things that are destroying the world. But even the fact that
they make us recycle like this, right?
Well, recycling should be a market-driven thing.
Right.
If when I buy a can of Coke, I'm paying for that syrup, the carbonated stuff in the can, and it's all built into the price. And if it's feasible for the free market to buy that from me and do something with it, because when you recycle, you have to use energy. You don't just recycle so it sits there and it automatically turns into another can or melts itself down. You have to use a lot of energy. You have to retrieve it. You have to get a truck to pick it up in the neighborhood.
Now you're using gas, petrol.
That's right.
Right? That's what.
So in some cases, it's a zero-sum game. There's no benefit here. Right. In fact, or some cases, it's a negative benefit.
Right, but it controls us.
But you feel good.
No, and it controls us. That's what I feel like.
These recyclable bags you buy, you pay for $1, or sometimes they give them to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of energy to make one of those. So you think, I'm saving the planet because I'm not using plastic. Yeah, but that bag that you use is using about 120 times more resources than that plastic bag, which you can use for 10 other things,
Right. So it is a big scam.
But we feel good about ourselves. We feel good. Like there was a Dixie Lee Ray, who was a former governor, I think, of Washington State. She was a nuclear scientist, and she was talking about recycling. And she said, glass is made out of sand. Oh, we ran out of sand. She says, no, but it makes us feel warm and fuzzy when we recycle,
But it takes up a lot of time. It does. It takes up a lot of time.
I'm in favor of it when it can be market driven.
Right,
I hate to see waste.
Right. Yeah. I mean, glass.
Stewardship. Good stewardship.
Right. Good stewardship. When they tell you that every number of the plastic, they don't all melt together, what are you supposed to do? You know that when they pick up the trash, the recycling, it all goes to the same dump.
I know
they lie to us. It all goes to the same dump. So Ukiah is north of San Francisco.
Oh, okay. And Sonoma. So I would.
So we have that. Don't ask me.
Sonoma's no Sonoma.
I've been to San Francisco.
Sausalito is the other side of the bridge.
You know everything, Michael.
No, but I've been.
You know everything. Michael is watching and listening from Hull.
I know what Hull is, and that's
Hull
is a member of Green Communities.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Green Communities. So after the break, Mark Allegro will join us. That'll be very interesting. He'll call in. We'll talk about that. And then I'd like to get to the nitty-gritty of Agenda 21, the basic stuff, just a bunch of basic questions that will help us and help me. Okay, so thank you, Hal, and we'll be right back. Go take a bathroom break. This is the Dianna Ploss Show.
You're listening to 1590 WSMN Nashua.
USA Radio News.
President Trump said Thursday that federal prosecutors added the campaign finance violations in the case against his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, to embarrass him. Regarding what Cohen said in court, the president tells Fox News,
he is a lawyer. He represents a client. I never directed him to do anything incorrect or wrong. And he understands that.
The president also said Cohen mainly did public relations work for him. A panel reviewing the massacre at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida says giving teachers guns and bolstering security will stop future mass shootings. A state commission on the Parkland shooting voted to include a recommendation to arm teachers who will undergo training. The state legislature will still have to pass such a measure. Insurance claims for the 3 California wildfires are at $9 billion. Now, 7 of that $9 billion is from the Camp Fire, which was in Northern California. This is USA Radio News.
This report is brought to you by Bank of America. According to the Fall 2018 Bank of America Small Business Owner Report, 4 out of 5 entrepreneurs are confident their year-end revenue will exceed that of 2017. And looking ahead to 2019, 67% plan to expand their business. To support that growth, 27% of business owners plan to hire in the next 12 months, an 11% increase from this time last year. One new challenge amid the positive outlook is the competition for talent during a period of record low unemployment, which has made finding qualified workers a more difficult prospect. Sharon Miller, head of small business, Bank of America.
Small business owners are increasingly confident in the economy and are planning to expand their businesses over the next 12 months. At the same time, a historically tight job market has entrepreneurs adopting new talent acquisition strategies, as 58% reported difficulty finding qualified candidates.
For more, visit newsroom.bankofamerica.com.
And Obamacare deadlines arrived, and USA Radio Network's Chris Barnes has the details.
The deadline to buy or make changes in health insurance on the Affordable Care Act's marketplace is this Saturday, December 15th. People in most states can sign up on the federally run marketplace, healthcare.gov. After Saturday, only people who qualify for a special enrollment period will be allowed to sign up or make any changes in their coverage for 2019. Qualifying life events for that would include getting married, having a baby, or losing coverage. For USA Radio News, I'm Chris Barnes.
Apple is expanding in Austin, Texas. The company announced a $1 billion investment to build a new campus. Texas Governor Republican Greg Abbott says this is a great deal for the city.
This truly elevates Austin as one of the premier technology hubs in the entire world, and we're proud that it's located right in the heart of Texas.
This is USA Radio News.
Look, I know this isn't the first MyPillow spot you've heard, and if you don't have yours yet, what are you waiting for? MyPillow stays cool, keeps its shape all night long. You can toss it in your washer and dryer, and it's like new again. Made in the USA, comes with a 10-year warranty and a great money-back guarantee. If you don't love your MyPillow, you have till March 1st to return it. How about that? Go to MyPillow.com, click on the buy one, get one free special. Use my code USA and get one free pillow when you buy one at regular price, plus shipping. That's MyPillow.com, click on the buy one, get one free special. Enter promo code USA. That's promo code USA.
The Senate voted 50-49 to approve a bill that would force politically active nonprofits to disclose their donors. Democratic Senator Gene Shaheen of Delaware says dark money plays a huge role in politics, and it's not always a good role.
The American people have a right to know if the candidates they choose to represent them are supported by foreign groups and shady special interests.
Florida is one of a handful of states that passed laws in 2018 requiring or permitting schools and other public buildings to prominently post the words "In God We Trust." Arizona is another state that allowed this. Alan Halls is a pastor down in Tampa Bay, and he tells Fox News we definitely need more God in our country.
You know, I think it's great. As a matter of fact, I think it's a step in the right direction. You know, look, if we look back at our histories, the history of our nation, and we look at that, even before there was a constitution, before there was a Declaration of Independence, you had a group of people that came here and with an ideology of a city on a hill. And so to quote Representative Daniels when she said that, you know, God is light. And so to bring light into a dark place is a good thing. So I think it's a great move in the right direction. Do I think that a sign is going to change everything? No, I don't. However, I believe it is a good step towards a great change.
And finally, it was back on this date in 2003 when Saddam Hussein was captured by U.S. forces while he was hiding out under a farmhouse in Iraq. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
It's 29 degrees. It's 4:05.
It's time for the Dianna Ploss Show. A Boston native, an American patriot, a political activist, a serial entrepreneur and medical professional, an American football fanatic, and a disco music enthusiast, and never afraid to have a conversation. She'll start that now. Your host, Dianna Ploss.
Welcome back to the Dianna Ploss Show. I'm here on WSMN every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon. You can listen live and watch on the Dianna Ploss Facebook live stream. It's kind of redundant if you say live Facebook live stream. You can also listen on the radio, 1590 AM, and you can watch it and listen on the WSMN.com website. So it's WSMN1590.com. Again, WSMN1590.com. My guest in the studio today is Hal Shurtleff, who is knowledgeable and very knowledgeable about Agenda 21. He's also the director of Camp Constitution, and you can find that at campconstitution.net. And, oh, we have I got a note, no mark yet.
Didn't he used to play for the Red Sox? No mark? Oh,
no
that's
mark.
No mark.
No, yeah, no mark. No marky. So you also manage the Mass Coalition Against Agenda 21, and I will put that Facebook link up there. I encourage everybody to
I think there's a Facebook page called Stop UN Agenda 21 that I'm one of the administrators. that has a whole lot more viewers and more active.
Stop UN Agenda 21. So I will look that up and I'll post that. Okay. So we have a question from Michael in Hull. And Michael said, who's providing the money for these apartment complexes?
Well, it's coming from the contractors. It's coming from HUD in many cases.
What does HUD stand for? So people
Housing
know?
and Urban Development. No, I don't know for like if he says there's a project going on in his town, I have to obviously observe, look at it. But HUD will guarantee some of these developers a certain percentage, not only of the funds, but also of the tenants under Section 8 housing.
Yes.
So if I'm a developer, see, this is the perverse incentive.
This is the corruption of it, though.
It's corruption. It's unconstitutional, and it also throws the marketplace out of whack. Because if I'm a developer, and I said to you, Diana, as an investor, we want to put 50 units here in downtown Nashua. This is what I'd like you to invest. And you'd say, what's the rate? What's my rate of return? I'd say, well, we're taking a big chance. There is a glut in the. You'd say, I'm not giving you any money. Oh, but HUD is going to guarantee 50% of the occupants, and when HUD's tenants will pay, right?
Because HUD's tenants would be Section 8.
That's right. Yeah. So then you say, well, that's a whole different story. I'll invest. You see, so that's the problem with these kinds of things.
So that's one thing. But but here's the thing. When it comes to the contractor, correct me if I'm wrong, the contractor must have padded the pockets or donated to somebody's political campaign.
Well, there's something called
benefit.
There's something called benefit corporation.
What's that?
And a benefit corporation is a state. When the state contracts, it will only contract with sustainable companies.
Okay, so there you go. So there you go.
That's one of the things. That's where a state contract, a state, not private contract. But then the towns will, in order for you to get this permit, these are the ground rules. You have to have, it has to be a sustainable, here are the requirements. You have to have certain building materials and, smaller units. There's a place up in Belfast, Maine. It's all privately owned, and it was called, it was some little village. A couple of wealthy leftists bought a farm, and they turned it into this.
Was it Old MacDonald?
No. It was supposed to be the wave of the future. And we're looking about 800 square
Utopia.
feet. 800 square feet, really tiny units, community living room, community kitchens. If you have a car, you got to park it. You can't bring it onto the premises. And this is supposed to be the community of the future. And these units weren't cheap either. And this is all private sector. And if you want to live in a place like that in the free market, fine. But this is that's the model for the future.
Right. But they're forcing us. Right. I mean, they're basically.
Well, it's not forced. If you like the idea of living in one of these, they call it transit communities, transit villages, what have you. Westwood, Massachusetts. I'll give you an example. We had a downturn, about 10 years ago, but they had planned to build this transit community. It's right on a Amtrak commuter rails.
That's a big surprise.
And 128 is right there.
I know where it is.
And they have all these box stores, all these big old box stores. And they have these units, these condo units. And I don't know how many, but it's just, to me, it's such a artificial, there's no aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
But we live near the city. We can hop on the commute. We get to the city of Boston, work in our cubicles, bounce back. We don't have to drive anyway because we have the restaurants, all the chain restaurants, some of the nicer chain restaurants, and some of the more fast food places. We have our supermarket right here. We don't need a car. Everything is right. If we do, we can get an Uber or a Zip card if we need to rent a car for a day. And maybe if that was all voluntary, I may not like it, but that's what you do.
And that's fine if that's somebody's choice. But when you look around the state of Massachusetts, and I've had people send me messages from all parts of the country, it's happening everywhere. Right? So here's the thing I just want to bring up. 40B. Do you know what 40B is?
No,
so 40B in Massachusetts is a zoning ordinance. And basically, it's been around for a long time. And what's happening is that the contractors are using this 40B. And 40B basically says that if you do X, Y, and Z, like, well, you're going to build this apartment complex, and you're going to let 20% of the units be sold or rented to low-income people. 40B means you can get around zoning ordinances. So, for example, I have a friend who lives in Lynn. Okay, he's lived there forever. On his little street that only had 2 houses, now, because they put on these apartment complexes and they, so two houses, and I think on one side of the street there was nothing. Now there's like 105 units on this dead-end street.
That's amazing.
Where now water from the units that got put up in front of him, because the drainage is so bad, it's pouring into his yard and destroying his bushes. There's not enough parking for people. There's trash everywhere. And so this is what's happening.
Well, I get up to Maine on a regular basis, and I was last August, early September, I was up in northern Maine, Aroostook County, Washington County, and you could see it there very vividly. And I have a friend who's a Vietnam veteran helicopter pilot, Roger Eck, E.K., and he's got a show on an AM station up there. He said that the UN Agenda 21 people up there made these depopulation projections. He said they're well ahead in Aroostook County and Washington counties.
That's scary.
Now, you go to the town of Millinocket. This is Millinocket, Maine. It's about, I don't know, is it 50, 70 miles north of Bangor. And then it's about 70 miles, give or take, maybe 50 miles north of Bangor. It was set up as a mill town. There were several paper mills in like late 1800s, early 1900s. The paper mills are gone. And they were put onto business, and one reopened at a small capacity, and they're tearing the mills down. I mean, it's just destroying the mills. You go through the little town, and about half the buildings are vacant and empty. There's one brand new storefront, though. You know what that is?
Catholic Charities.
No, that wouldn't.
That's a good answer, though, isn't it?
But it's a U.S. Park Department.
Not good.
And what they've done is the lady who owns Burt's Bees bought some land, and she gave it to the United States government.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. They call it a national monument. Now, there was a law that was passed during Teddy Roosevelt administration. They defined a national monument as there's a certain definition. And there's like, okay, if George Washington slept here, then you had a buffer zone of so many feet or what have you. A tract of land is not a monument, but she gave it to Obama against the wishes of the governor. So they set up this.
Don't buy Burt's Bees.
And I'm not saying don't buy Burt's Bees.
It's my show.
Okay, that's what you want to do. So now they want to turn this into a national park.
And we're going to talk about that. Can we put that on hold for a second? Because I just want to go back. You're listening to the Dianna Ploss Show. We're talking about Agenda 21 and how when you step out of your house, or even if you look out the window or you watch TV, you can see it alive and well. And one of the things are these bike paths that are popping up everywhere. Thank you very much.
They're dangerous bike paths. Yes. I like riding bike. I haven't rode one in a while, but they're good things to have. They're not going to take the place of the internal combustion engine. No way. But in a lot of cities, you'll see they call them complete streets. And if you look up that term, it'll take you to sustainable something or other, where they're encouraging these towns and cities to revamp the traffic patterns, making it very difficult to drive downtown.
Why would they do that? Why would they make it difficult
the internal combustion engine is
to take
a demon.
your car somewhere? So they would you agree that they want you out of your car?
That's right. And
they want you out of your car.
Al Gore wrote his horrible book, Earth in the Balance, right? Back in.
Did he write it when he was on his private jet?
He might have wrote it while he was, at first he invented the internet. Then he taught Bobby Orr how to skate. And then he probably, And you remember the Unabomber had a copy of the Unabomber had a copy of his book in that little creepy cabin of his. It didn't make national news.
What was his name? Kaczynski?
Ted, something like that.
Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Ted Kaczynski?
Oh, Teddy.
Okay, so they want you out of your cars.
He said that in his book that we have to abolish the internal combustion engine. So It's not, again, it's not, take the tinfoil hat off. You know what's interesting about this? When people debate, discuss an issue, and it's a topic that they don't want to deal with, then they throw this conspiracy theory term out.
Well, this happened to me last night. So
I said, well, back up a minute, okay? I'm giving you facts that quotes from people. I'm showing you things when I do these presentations. In fact, I was down to Cape Cod a few years ago, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I gave a presentation in Falmouth. And it was a guy and a lady showed up, and he started asking me. I knew he was a phony, but he came up to me with a aluminum foil, and he was going to try to put it on my head. I said,
that's assault.
That's what I said to him. I said, that's assault. Yeah. And I just presented, in about an hour plus of an hour and a half facts. I gave quotes. I gave documentation
that people can look up.
And he should say, gee, I didn't know. Wow. Right. Okay. Oh, maybe they said that, but maybe a pair. Instead, he came there with he didn't even know what I was going to say, but he came with that stupid little.
Well, he had the tinfoil already.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
he had the tinfoil ready. So I just want to. Well, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, anyway, I let him know on certain terms that I'm not going to.
You're not going to let him touch you.
And in fact, it's going to encourage me to be more aggressive exposing it. And I said, why are you even worried if what we're saying is so wacky and
so
kooky?
What do you care?
Why do you care? Yeah.
Why do you care? Right. No, I agree. So I just want to give a visual for people, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Okay. So they build these apartment complexes. Okay. So what we see in Paris with the fuel prices and all the taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Unemployment at 10%. People from the suburbs are protesting, rioting over the tipping point was the gas. Mm-hmm. The gasoline tax, right? So my thought is, what they want to do is they want to get you out of your land in the suburbs, right? Because they make the price
Well, you remember what I said. Maurice Strong said the biggest threat to the world is the American middle class, suburban America.
Right.
And these suburban America are the ones that vote for these leftists.
Exactly. So they get you out of your single family house because now you can't afford to put gas in your car so that you can drive around all these places, right? So now you have to move into one of those places in the city because you have no other choice.
And they want to have a mileage tax. They've been implemented. I think there's a few places that have done that. I know that's something they want to do nationally, a mileage tax.
Right, a mileage tax. So then you get forced to not have a car because you have no place to put it. Because now, if you look, I was in Belmont the other day. They have the
Belmont, Massachusetts.
Belmont, Massachusetts.
Belmont,
I'm sorry. Thank you.
And Belmont's a member of ICLEI, the ICLEI.
Belmont, Mass. Right. So if you look, just the change in Belmont, Massachusetts on Chapella Road, they have a path for the bike. They have a path for the bus. And so anybody can see that what they're doing is they're trying to push us off of using the roads. So this is not my imagination, right? It's not. So, okay. So we get that. Let's talk about property rights. Because we have a situation in Gloucester, Massachusetts right now. Mm-hmm. I was at a meeting last night and everybody looked at me as if I had three heads. Okay. There's a place called Dogtown. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
In Gloucester, Massachusetts. Apparently it's about anywhere between, they haven't exactly measured it out, but it's an area between 3,000 and 5,000 acres, uninhabited. However, there are a few houses, maybe 10 houses, that are in this area labeled Dogtown. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's in this area labeled Dogtown is part of the Cape Ann Sportsman's Club. And the part of the Sportsman's Club are both the outdoor ranges, the range for pistol shooting and the range for the long guns. Now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to put it on the historic, the national
preservation,
historic, they all have different names. Mm-hmm. I went in there. So the National Historic Preservation of Districts or whatever it is, right? So they're trying to push this. And I went in there, guns a-blazing, and I said, listen, people, right? We had a meeting at the sports club for just a regular meeting. And I brought it up and I said, we need to take this very seriously. Like, we are under attack. They're all looking at me. It just so happened that we have a member who's also on the planning board of Rockport, which is on the same island.
Right.
The Cape Ann is an island that includes Gloucester and Rockport. Gloucester takes up about 2/3 of the island, Rockport about 1/3. So he basically, said that I was a nice lady. I don't think he knew who I was, but he said,
Boy, did he misjudge you.
He misjudged me because he said, I don't think the UN cares about this tiny little piece of land in Gloucester. And that guy next to me, who's very well versed, Brian, said, yes, they do. And so these people don't believe me. Would you agree, from what the little I told you, that this is what's going on?
Well, you have to explain it. If you say, no, we're not going to have UN troops coming in and taking the land.
Exactly.
We're having our own neighbors and friends and relatives who have bought into this. That
Makes it worse.
That makes it worse. Yeah.
So explain it better than how I just explained it.
Oh, you did a good job.
Okay, but it is about property rights.
But first off, we're talking about the densely populated cities. So they have these stack 'em and pack 'em housing developments, rail.
And just so you know, I fought against a stack 'em and pack 'em development in Gloucester at the Fuller School. I made 2 videos, and the Gloucester City Council and the mayor were involved in pressing fake trespassing charges against me.
Really?
Because of the videos, and they brought me into court.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first in all this, but it's all connected. So continue.
And then they'll have what they call smart growth areas. So let's look at the town of Rindge, New Hampshire, as an example. Some people might be familiar with it. It's I don't know, about 30 miles west of here on the Massachusetts border, and it's about 40 how many acres, square feet, 40,000.
Where is this again? I'm sorry. Say
Rindge, New Hampshire.
Rindge, New Hampshire.
The population is about 4,000 people, and it's very rural. There's so they had planned to have what they call a smart growth area, which would be the intersection of 101 and 202 and what's the other road? 202 and 119, I think. And this would be where the development could take place. There'd be housing, HUD would come in but the rest of the area, they'd have a lot of land control things. Now, thankfully, they kicked it out, lock, stock, and barrel. But that's the plan, was to, all the development will go on in this little area, this little smart growth area. And if you buy land on property there, you can put your store, your gas station, and your high rise and all that. But if you own the farm, a few miles out of town, you may not be able to build on that farm. You may not be able to put an in-law apartment there. If you had something called a vernal pool, you won't. In fact, they've already passed this in certain towns where you can't do any developing so many feet from your vernal. Keene, New Hampshire. Keene is one of the several of the ICLEI, ICLEI towns and cities in New Hampshire. I think there's only 4.
So can you explain ICLEI, because somebody just came late to the party. Ron, thank you. Ron, thank you for joining the show. He said, what is Agenda 21? I'm late to the party. Ron, I just put a link above AmericanPolicy.org. That is
American Policy Center.
Right. Yeah. The link says American Policy, but it's American Policy Center. And that's Tom DeWeese's link. You go to that website, you can actually download a free pamphlet about Agenda 21.
If you go to Camp Constitution's YouTube channel and just put in Agenda 21, there'll probably be about 15 videos. Some more recent. There's a full-blown presentation that I gave back in early September, and lots of examples of showing it here and there in different parts of the region where it's being implemented. In fact, when I was up in Maine, I was in, as I mentioned, Millinocket, did a little video there.
So keep going. So I'm gonna put the link. I'm gonna. Put the link.
So the rural areas too, so they make it difficult. California is really ground zero for this stuff. And in fact, there's a great video we have on our YouTube channel. We just got about 30,000 views in the last week. It was called California. It is called California Wildfires and Agenda 21. And the lady that does the presentation is from the area that was ravaged by these fires. Debbie Bacigalupi. Debbie was in Poland at this UN conference just recently. I think she's still there. I think it's a 1 week or 2 week conference.
Do you know I'm part Polish?
What's that?
Did you know I was part Polish?
I think I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. Those Poles. I love those Poles.
They're tough.
Right. They're a tough breed.
They're a tough
breed.
They
are
people.
hardy.
Yeah.
What can I say? So I am going to put the link for.
Well, anyway, Debbie's a rancher. I mean, 2nd or 3rd generation rancher. So she knows the stuff pretty well. And she said that it isn't climate change that caused those fires. She said mainly it's due to the policies and I say crazy. They're crazy policies, but they're Agenda 21 policies about grazing and not cutting down your own trees on your land and so forth. Not actually managing the grasslands and the forests. A lot of grasslands, if the cattle aren't chomping on the grass, they're going to burn up. And
right.
That's where a lot of the fires are. So she does a really good job. And she did this at our camp last August, and the fires was raging, but not to the extent they were. And then, of course, we see all the devastation.
And I missed your camp. I know I was going to go, and then something came up.
Well,
I can't remember what it was, but I would like to get there. But so let's talk about California just for a second. You're listening to the Dianna Ploss Show here on WSMN, and my great guest today is Hal Shurtleff, and we're discussing Agenda 21 and how you see it every single day in California. Here's my hypothesis for somebody who's not knowledgeable as you are. Okay. If all the land gets burned, including all of those houses, could they turn around and just reclaim all of that land and say that you can't live on it anymore?
Yes, and that's what's happening.
Okay, so it's not
with the Bundy Ranch.
Yes, I was going to ask you that.
Well, that ranch is the last ranch in that whole area, in that county, I believe.
In California?
Well, that particular area.
In that area.
Yeah.
Okay, so
where there used to be 50 or 60, they're the last.
Okay, so let's say it again. I'm going to say it again. So this was my hypothesis.
That's Nevada, actually.
Okay, that was Nevada for Bundy, but in California, where all the wildfires are, they burned houses, lots of houses.
Will they be able to get the permits to rebuild? I don't know.
Right? Is it possible? What I'm saying is that based on what we know, what you know about Agenda 21, Hal, is it possible that people won't be able to build there again, and then they can reclaim that land because part of Agenda 21
they turn it into federal or state property off limits to development.
And that's what Obama did, right? Did he do that in Utah or was it Nevada?
Well, the federal government owns a big chunk of the land in the West. They own more than half of Nevada. These states are federal land. Now, the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the authority to have jurisdiction over docks, magazines, forts, and other needful buildings. Also says that when this territory acquired, the job of the federal government is pretty much to dispose of it. I think that's the word. Turn it into a state as quickly as possible, not to control it forever. So they're not supposed to have all that land. They're not supposed to manage land. That's not in the so they have a Bureau of Land Management. Now this goes back many years. It's not something that's new. So before Agenda 21, there was still these land grabs. There's a great little video. It's actually a country and western song. It's called Big Park. And we have.
You want to sing it for us?
No, because there'll be you get a bunch of people turn off.
No, it's my show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, but you don't want all your listeners to leave.
No, my listeners are very tolerable.
Terry Kennedy. Tolerable. I think you said it right.
No, I love my listeners, but they tolerate. Right, they have thick skin. The people who follow me or listen to the Dianna Ploss Show, they have thick skin. They're tough.
Good.
They're all tough.
So watch that video. It's funny, but and this came out in the late 80s. I actually met Terry Kennedy at California, the country and western singer. But he talks about how the U.S. Parks Department comes in and acquires land, and then they have buffer zones. And before you know it, you've lost your property rights.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
So that was happening before Agenda 21.
No. So
But then you have land trusts, right? Now, land trusts, and there are some land trusts that do a good job. These are a lot of family land trusts. Hey, great grandpappy and grandmommy own this land. When we pass away, we want to turn this into condos. So that's not bad. But you have some of the Nature Conservancy, for example. Big Agenda 21 people. They'll come in and they'll buy your land, and then they'll turn it and sell it to the government.
So then you don't have it anymore. Yeah. You're off of it, right?
And something in my presentation, I found this. It was one of the goals of the Nature Conservancy is to empower women. Now, wait a minute. I think
I feel empowered.
Well, first off, empowering is something that you do. You don't need a Nature Conservancy to do that, but why was their job is to conserve nature. Why would they be interested in empowering women? Well, if population control is one of your issues, who has babies?
Right, women.
No, that may have changed because science has been rewritten too. There's 25 50, 60 genders and all that, but women have babies.
72. Right. Women have babies, and if you tell them that they can control
and they shouldn't have babies,
and they shouldn't, you can have an abortion. It's population control.
Yeah. So, I mean, some things just aren't real. You remember there'd be a little cartoon that will say, "What doesn't belong in this picture?"
Oh yeah.
Like be a farm, and it'll be maybe a rhinoceros and a giraffe or something like you'd circle it. Well, when you see this, Nature Conservancy. What doesn't belong here? Why are they interested in empowering women? And the answer is pretty simple.
Right.
And by the way, if you look at the leaders of Nature Conservancy, they go back to Goldman Sachs. Now, why does Goldman Sachs get to do with the Nature Conservancy? Well, because they're the ones that were going to sell the carbon credits if Congress passed that back in thankfully they didn't. The carbon credit will be the currency of the future if we're not successful in exposing this stuff.
And if people know I'm a staunch President Trump supporter, right? Clearly, he comes everywhere with me. As many places as I can take him. He's in the studio with me.
He's not wearing a red tie, though. I wore the red tie.
No, not in that picture. But his hair looks fantastic today. Fantastic. He woke up like that. What can I say? But if you listen to him, any of his speeches, he talks about nationalism over globalism. So he knows what's going on.
Well, he took an oath to defend the Constitution.
Yes.
And Article 2 of the Constitution gives him about 9 or 10 or so powers or duties. That's it. Not supposed to be the most powerful. He's not supposed to. His job description doesn't include the most powerful man in the free world. He has a very limited duties, and one of them is to put, the interest of the American people
before
and he said
everybody
that,
else.
Yeah, and he said that at one of his his inauguration, and he said that to the UN, and that's when they were.
That was
chuckling.
beautiful, and they laughed at him.
There were people laughing. Well, it may have been a lack. It's refreshing to see someone honest. Who knows why they were laughing? But the UN people, the interest of their countries, they could care less about their countries.
Right.
They only care about, well, in many of these third world despots, they just make it's a good living
for them,
you
not
have
for their people.
Diplomatic immunity. You get good money. You have the run of the city, and
you have all the resources of the country.
That's right.
Basically,
That's
right? Okay, so I just want to tell you a little bit about Dogtown. Then I'm going to get to some nitty gritty questions. So my comment to the group last night was saying that if this group comes in here and they say that it's a national whatever, national historic district, and they name it Dogtown, they even wanted to bring archaeologists from Rhode Island to come into the part of Dogtown that's owned by the Cape Ann Sportsman's Club. And they said no. And I said, don't let them in there. So they wanted the archaeologists to come in there because all you need to do is find one arrowhead. And there you go. Or a bone, even though it belonged to the chicken dinner that we had last week, right? So if they name it, I was trying to explain to them is if they designate that, nothing's going to stop them from saying you can't use this now for that purpose.
Can't shoot on,
You can't shoot. And then so we had this guy from the planning board who was basically kind of whitewashing, saying, I'm all for property rights and I love this club because I'm a member, but I don't think they can take the homes. There's a few homes in this area. Of course they can. Right? Would you agree?
Well, look what happened in New London, Connecticut.
What happened in New London, Connecticut?
The Kelo case. I actually met Mrs. Kelo. I think I can't remember her first name. New London is an Agenda 21 town. It's an ICLEI member, ICLEI. By the way, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiative was founded in 1990 at the UN headquarters in New York City, 2 years before Agenda 21 was rolled out to the world. And their goal was to get the local towns and cities all over the world to implement Agenda 21.
And they've done a good job of it.
They've done a very good job of it. In fact, we're told that where they get the most pushback is in the United States. They don't get a lot of pushback. In fact, I have alerts on my internet, on my computer, and when I get these alerts, it'd be stories about Agenda 21. That term is used in the English-speaking world, except the United States. Very few. The only time you'll see it here is when someone's writing a letter to the editor, right? Or maybe, like I say, an alternative, conservative, independent website. But anytime the mainstream media, they won't use that term. But if you look at the other parts of the world, They have no trouble using that term.
And they think it's okay. Many people think it's okay.
They don't have any trouble with it. It's like you can be a socialist in England, and that's okay. Here, you call yourself a socialist, people are a little uncomfortable with that.
Well, they're getting more comfortable. So I just want to
more comfortable than before.
Yeah, I want to let people know who are watching the Facebook live stream and listening and participating on the Facebook live stream. Thank you very much. So I just posted the link for ICLEI. I just posted that. Joe from Lynn, who's the one whose street got overrun. It's not the same that it used to be when he bought his house. He says, Dianna, so why is MoveOn.org involved with the Dogtown deal?
Interesting. MoveOn.org.
MoveOn.org.
Led by Joanne Blades.
Yep.
And funded by dear George Soros.
George Soros.
He's one of his entities, one of the bigger funders of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so just so you know, that Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I know this because I lived there and I've been attacked there. I know that Charlie Baker is very well connected to the mayor of Gloucester. Mm-hmm. And my hypothesis, this is another hypothesis, is he wants this. He wants this to pass, right, for him politically, because he is behind a lot of...
It's a feather in his cap.
It's a feather in his cap.
It looks good on his portfolio.
Exactly. So, so why would you think that George Soros would have anything to do with this?
Well, he's a big part of that.
He's a big part of Agenda 21.
Absolutely.
So he has his footprint.
Except his back in, it's about 5-6 years ago. I have a friend who lives in Nantucket. She's actually a member of the Coffin family, the founders, the early settlers of not the founders, but the early settlers of Nantucket. Indians that lived there, Native Americans, Indians that lived there prior. And so she showed me where he's got two buildings there, two homes there, and there's a natural easement. His property overlooks, it's in the Tom Nevers section of Nantucket, and it overlooks the open ocean. So there's a natural easement, and only people that live in town are told where it is. You go right to his backyard, and they can't stop you. Well, he wants to do away with that. He doesn't want these people with dirty fingernails and going through his backyard. So I had my son. He's 21 now, and her two daughters. Nobody was home, but we were trying to deliver information about Agenda 21 to their home, and Nantucket is ground zero for another ground zero. Every time there's a real estate transaction, a certain percentage of that profit goes to the land trust there.
Huh.
Yeah. And I mean, it's already half the island. I mean, I understand you have an island and you don't want to, and I'm not against preserving land, having parks. I think it's a question of how it's done, and private property has to be paramount, you see, and that's taking.
And they can't infringe on the private property rights of people.
Well, they are.
Right. And that's because the thing is they want socialism.
Well, the only infringement is the harm and nuisance type of thing, And,
right.
And I don't, like I say, if a town has certain ordinances, I may or may not like them, but it's done locally. For example, we live in a residential area. I don't think I'd want to have a
mariachi band right next door.
Or someone put a high rise 2 doors down. That's then my value goes down, and you have to disrupt my life.
You know what else? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know what else? It popped into my head. Happened in Gloucester, and it got pushed back by, I think it was Ward 1 in Gloucester. Gloucester has 5 wards. Habitat for Humanity. Mm-hmm. And I haven't had the chance to look into them, but I can tell you right now, something doesn't smell right with Habitat for Humanity. A woman who her son, I guess, somehow convinced her to put her house in a trust or something and put it over to Habitat for Humanity. It was a 1-family house, right? Like basically the thing in front of her house, I think, was a small street and the beach, Good Harbor Beach. So he got the woman, his own mother, out of the house, put her in a nursing home. Habitat for Humanity was going to build a 2-family structure, 3 bedrooms each, 2-car parking in each, in front of all the other people that were behind. So blocking their view of the ocean. Mm-hmm. And I was at this meeting, and it was unbelievable to see the politicians fighting for this in Gloucester, because they get money. They get money, people. Pay attention.
Tax, real estate
property tax, real estate, donations to their campaign. It got pushed down. And we had the top people from Habitat Humanity trying to tell us that, you're racist, you're this, you're that. It was amazing, but it got shot down. But the thing with Dogtown, I'm afraid, is that it's gonna be a hard fight. Would you say that? Would you agree?
Well, it depends on the people at this sportsman club. If they yield, a lot of people do. They're giving guarantees, false. You know, in Maine, what town was it in Maine? It was in southern Maine, and it was a land trust, and the people bought into it. Well, snowmobiling is a big pastime up there, and within a short time, they said no snowmobiling. So, it's going to be preserved. You don't have to worry about it. Next thing you know, they can't snowmobile,
right?
And you can't hunt, and you can't do
right.
You know, our friend Dave Kopatz out in Belchertown, what's a town near Belchertown. He was on the planning. He was actually he was head of the environmental planning committee there. He's a pro private property. There was a farm that a trust bought, and it was it was owned by this person passed away. They wanted to maintain it and so forth, and they said no tractors on this farm. You know, and they said, wait a minute.
Did you have a tractor on a
Yeah,
farm?
it's supposed to be a farm. And it was other things. They really didn't want to use it as a farm. And then he identified some harmful, there was a stream and there was some old growth. There was a lot of this weeds and things of this nature. And he said, we need to clear this out. Oh, we're not going to do that. But we're going to cut down some of the maple trees and oak trees and put white pines and the pine trees, which were not native. We're not native. You know,
why would they do that?
Because he couldn't understand it. It just didn't make sense. But someone was giving some kind of financial incentive. I don't know. And so you see some of these people who are supposed to be environmentalists really don't know much about environment and the native the species there, what have you. You know, they were ignorant of it. And he studied it. He was studied forest management, so he knew what was going on here.
So I think from what I've read, people on the planning boards in all these cities.
They're the ones to watch out for.
They're the ones to watch out for.
People hear all those bad. No, what's the average person to do? And I would suggest, bone up on it. You know, I mentioned
read
Tom
about
DeWeese,
it. If you don't know what bone up on it
and you don't
means.
have to read every little thing. You can spend the rest of your life, but go to your town's website and look for buzzwords: planning boards, sustainable community, environmental.
Okay, so I have a thing.
councils.
That was one of my questions. Give us some buzzwords. Keep going. Sustainability, big buzzword. Big buzzword.
Sustainable is a big one.
Bring the garlic.
Now it's not Agenda 21. It's now Agenda 2030.
Agenda 2030.
Smart cities. Anytime you see the word smart, because what's the opposite of smart? Is stupid or dumb, right? So if you're against this, you must be dumb, right? Yeah. I just mentioned, well, of course,
climate change.
There's climate change commissions in your towns, and you wonder why the police are driving these little tiny vehicles, and why the parking, they have little parking places for your battery charged cars and all that. So this is the stuff that you see. Gee, what happened to that nice little field there? It's all covered with solar panels, and who's paying for this? And
but with the solar and wind, right? I know for a fact that the reason the towns and cities do it is because they get a federal subsidy. Federal subsidies are tax dollars, people. It's your money. And these wind and solar and all that, it's not as reliable.
That's right.
As
can't be stored.
Fossil fuel. It can't be stored, right?
And again, the grid has to have electricity all the time.
Right.
And at a certain time, like right now, people are going home. They're putting on their TV sets. They're
the Christmas lights.
They're turning their Christmas lights
putting
on.
their heat up.
They're going to go to bed. 11, 12, 1, 2 o'clock, and that's going to be. But you need to have the stuff going on all the time, and this so-called renewable energies just can't provide that on a regular basis. So you have to have backup. So if you have a wind turbine, you have to have gas back, because gas burns up really quickly.
Exactly. So what do you do?
And
what do you do if there's no wind?
Or if it's too much wind, then you got to shut it down.
Then you have to shut it down
because it will harm the turbine.
Right.
And with solar, you got a snowstorm. Now, if you want to invest in solar panels and don't expect my tax money, go right ahead. Go buy those panels. A lot of people, though, they're still on the grid. And I know some people that are actually off the grid. They buy their own panels. They're not doing it to save the planet. They're doing it because they want their independence. And they have firewood.
Good for them, because those are the people when we have the zombie apocalypse.
That's where you go to, right?
That they'll be able to live. Hope they're young and can.
There's a friend of mine up in New Hampshire. He lives up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. He's got a log cabin, and he has solar panels, and he has a lot of wood because, he's got about 10 acres, so he burns the wood when the solar can't provide. He lives by himself, so it's not like
he's not like he needs a lot.
He doesn't have 10 children running around the house. And,
but listen, people had 10 children back in the day, before my day, when they had to heat the house with wood.
That's right.
Right? So they survived.
Well, one of the interesting things, Dr. Michael Kaufman, and I mentioned him a little earlier, he's passed away, but he used to take, at our camp, he used to take little nature walks when our camp was in Ringe, New Hampshire. And he'd show this thick forest with stone walls going through it. And it said that we're learning, the adults learn stuff too. He says, now, why would you build these stone walls in this thick 100-year-old forest?
Let me guess. To keep animals out.
No, it wasn't a stone. There were no forests 100 years ago.
Exactly.
It was farmland.
It was farmland.
And he said, if you took a picture, if you look at old pictures of the Mount Monadnock region 100 years ago, you would see very few trees. It was clear, almost clear cut. In fact, most of the Northeast was like 90% deforested. And why was it deforested? Well, wood was used.
Houses and
wood was used for so much.
Cook.
But thanks to the innovations, coal, you think, oh, that's dirty energy. Actually, 100 years ago, it was a great alternative because it's either coal that you get out of the ground or you cut trees down. Then you had natural gas. Natural gas is a byproduct of oil. You get oil well, you're going to get this gas. They don't know what to do with it. You couldn't transport it. It was too dangerous to transport until someone invented the seamless pipe. Then all of a sudden, you could transport this stuff pretty cheaply and safely. And it was the coal companies that lobbied Congress to keep gas out for the longest time. It was the longest time they lobbied against it. And finally, I don't think it was 60s and 70s, it was still called deregulated. And gas is a relatively clean fossil fuel.
Right.
And everything has its problems. I mean, yeah, we had those things in Andover where there was explosions, and that's unfortunate. And I don't think.
And who the heck knows exactly what happened?
Yeah,
we will. I don't think we'll ever know exactly what happened.
But anytime you transport anything that produces energy has a tendency to could cause some problems if it's not properly dealt with.
And then human error, all right? Because it's always human error.
Yeah.
Right? It's not anything, but I just want to give a plug to Hal Shurtleff, my guest here on the Dianna Ploss Show. I'm here every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. And today, Hal and I are talking
We didn't talk about Article 5.
We didn't talk about Article 5. Can we do that another time, maybe?
Certainly.
Can we do that? Because I just want to get to all these questions. So I just want to tell people that Article 5 has to do with this whole Agenda 21.
Well, Article 5, there's two ways to amend the Constitution. So Article 5 of the Constitution. First way is the only way that's ever been used by under the U.S. Constitution is when 2/3 of the U.S. House and Senate approve an amendment and it goes to the states for ratification. 3/4 of either the state legislators or 3/4 of the state ratifying conventions. The ratifying convention was used, as far as I know, just once to ratify to get rid of prohibition, the 21st Amendment. So that's the two ways. The other way is for 2/3 of the states to apply for an Article 5 convention, and when that happens, they will convene, and then they can propose amendments. But that's the problem. You've got a sovereign entity. There are no laws and rules guiding an Article 5 convention. Congress has tried, so that must mean Congress under the necessary and proper clause can definitely control a convention. We don't know who the delegates will be. There's some well-intentioned people pushing. There's some people that aren't so well-intentioned, but I use the term that we have to make the Constitution has to be Common Core compliant. And that's what, in my opinion, if we ever have a convention, that's what we will see something that's not recognizable. It would be a vastly different.
But would you agree that getting rid of our Constitution
it's definitely part of
is part of Agenda 21, and they want to get rid of the Electoral College, from what I've read.
That's right.
Okay, from Tom DeWeese, I think that's where I've got mine. I just want to say, Peter says, "What about smart food like popcorn? Is that okay?"
Oh, smart food! No, it's part of the UN plot.
Peter's a comedian.
Get rid of that stuff.
Peter's a comedian, and so John says, "Where are the environmentalists when hundreds of acres of trees are cut down for developments?"
That's right.
Right. They're not beating down doors. The Second Amendment.
Yes.
Agenda 21? Is there a connection between getting rid of the second?
Well, you have to restrict. You have to restrict. You don't want the peasants uprising and having the means to resist. So, of course, you have to restrict their ability to fight back.
So we see a lot of attacks on the Second Amendment.
You see it all over the country.
Right.
You've seen some, like here in New Hampshire, they passed the concealed carry, which was I was at that hearing.
Amazed.
That was
That's
wonderful.
fantastic.
Maine did the same thing. They're
That's
going to probably turn that
fantastic.
around. But there was something in a town in Colorado. They want to ban. They want to ban certain weapons. Of course, they use the term assault weapon.
This isn't I got this assault weapon from my mother and father when I was growing up.
Assault weapon is something with military. There's a definition. But if I have a slingshot and hit you with it, I've assaulted you.
You can kill somebody with that.
I can probably hit you with Donald Trump.
No,
I don't think
don't
it would
hit Donald Trump.
I don't think it would do too much damage. But if I hit you just right, that could be an assault sign. It's just like a hate crime.
Right.
I've never seen a love crime. Oh, Diane, I'm going to rob you and kick you in the head because I love you. So yeah. No, all crimes are probably based on either hate or just
or something.
Definitely not love's involved here. Yeah. So it's how they twist the language. But no, smart food. That's the popcorn, right?
Yeah, that's a popcorn.
Yeah.
I think you can eat smart food, Peter. Yeah, you can eat that.
See,
popcorn.
sustainable is a good word. The term sustainable. But they've taken a word and redefined it. Say, if I owned a business, if I want to pass it off to my children and their children, I've got to do something that's sustainable. I mean, how do we keep business keep making profits
going?
So that's a good word, but they've redefined that word.
It's like progressive.
Progressive.
They've taken that and they've
So the word smart food, there's nothing wrong with eating smart food, I don't think.
So I want to let you know that Gordon says great Agenda 21 discussion. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We have a few more minutes with Hal. So I just want to recap so people understand. When you go out your door or you're watching TV, I want you to be able to identify your bike paths,
your rail to trails,
the
solar panels popping up on the tracker patterns that have changed,
the wind turbines,
the wind turbines that are on that used to be a beautiful hill or mountainside have now covered with these things.
Right. So you see that the bus, they're now designated bus lanes,
plastic bag bans,
straw bans,
water bottle bans.
Yep.
All these types of things are all Agenda 21.
Reduce speed limits, you'll notice.
Well, the reason why they're reducing the speed limits is because people are riding bicycles and getting killed.
In Cambridge, there's been so many.
And there's a spike of but these roads were not designed for bicycles.
But see, I think they're reducing the speed and narrowing the roads little by little to get us used to the fact that we can't take our cars in places like Boston, right, and Cambridge. They want us out of our cars.
That's right.
And if there are no places to park your car, you're going to get rid of it. And where are you going to move?
You're going to stay in your transit community. You're going to take the commuter rail or the subway or the bus to your work and come back on your little. You have the restaurant right there. You don't have to travel that far.
Right. And so it sounds good on paper, right? But think about this: you can only go where your bicycle or that bus line or that train line will take you. Without a car.
And you can only be when that train is running.
Exactly. So you are being controlled. You are being controlled. It takes away your autonomy.
I must think that these little petty tyrants must get a big kick out of people taking their little recycled bags. I'm saving the planet. I'm doing this. They must get a big chuckle out of it.
You know what I get? What I look at. So I used to live in Cambridge, and people say, "Oh my God, you live in Cambridge." I grew up in Boston, but I moved to Cambridge because I was living in the suburbs, and I needed to be closer to. I used to work the night shift, so I needed to be closer. So that it was hard to drive home after a 12-hour night shift. So when I lived in Cambridge, you used to see this all the time. These parents of little kids thinking they're doing the right thing by the planet by riding wherever they had to go, and they had their kid in some trailer behind them.
Right.
Okay, so the kid is at the same level as your exhaust pipe. How? That doesn't even make any sense to me.
They're endangering that child.
It doesn't even make any sense. And in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Peter eats smart food and he loves his bike. So it doesn't even make any sense to me because you are putting your kid in danger, right? When you're doing that.
When I almost clobbered this poor, I was in Arlington, Massachusetts last night, which is an Agenda
another
town.
One.
And this guy's running this little bike path, and I almost hit him I had to be very careful. They had these obnoxious little lights that go on and off, and I said, "Oh, there he!" I came very close to hitting him. Hitting him when I opened the door, and then I was actually in Cambridge, and some careless bicycle almost clobbered him. You know,
you can look to see how many people in the last couple of years have died in the city of
That's right.
Cambridge, Massachusetts. But I was watching a video earlier today about what's going on in Paris, and I couldn't help but think that people like George Soros and others who want this New World Order, Agenda 21, globalism, whatever name, I couldn't help but think that they were happy about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because they don't care about us. Like, people need to realize that politicians do not care about us.
Who was the former Obama, Rob Emanuel, never let a good crisis.
Right, and look what he wants now. He wants marijuana legalized, right? And he wants to put casinos in because they've bankrupted
Bread and circus.
the retirement.
Panem and circum, right?
It's unbelievable. So let me ask you this question, because I asked somebody this before, and they again thought I was losing my marbles. George Soros, who was, 14 or so when he was helping the Nazis?
He was 14. Yeah. There's a video of him saying that.
So he's a big proponent of this. He's pushing it. He's financing it. Agenda 21.
He's financing a lot of things, and everything he's financing is the opposite of liberty and freedom.
Okay. So what I was thinking of when I saw the apartment buildings on the rail lines, all I could think about is almost that's like a replica of the Jews in the ghettos.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that to me, that's what it reminded me of. And I actually called up an Orthodox Jewish friend of mine who said, well, Dianna, I think that's a stretch. And I'm saying, no, I don't think that's a stretch, because he's one of the people pushing this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you learn from your past. And so now what are they going to do? Put people, I mean, to me, it's history.
Well, one of the things
itself.
I've seen, you see these evacuation signs, right? And there's arrows. And I've asked politicians in Boston, I said, where
I know, really.
Where do you go? When I follow the arrows, and then what? When is that taking me?
Right.
They don't know where it goes.
They don't even know.
But they put the signs up, and I said, if the government tells me to go east, I'm probably going to go west or stay put.
Right, or stay put. So I want to give a big shout out to all of the people who participated in the live stream on the Dianna Ploss Show today and asked questions on the live stream. I thought your questions were brilliant. I will go back later on tonight to go over them and answer some of the ones that we didn't get to today. I'm hoping that we can get you on the show again, because people love this.
Sure.
Because I thought it was, very informative. Maybe people can send me questions, and when you come on again.
Well, I think if they start learning about this, they will become experts themselves, and they will be saying, hey, Dianna, I know. Let me get on your show and talk about it.
That's perfect. Yeah. And they
but
can
you
start
need to
sharing.
take a stand. You need to get involved in your local, because it's being done not so much nationally, but locally.
Yeah, local. It's happening everywhere.
So you have to understand it, and don't panic. You don't want to come across. You have to organize. You've got to get. If it's just one person, it's one screwball ranting and raving
about. That was me last night.
The UN conspircy theory.
That was me last night.
But if you have an like they have in Ringe, New Hampshire, the Save Our Town. And they were very successful. They organized a small group. They got people out.
Can they join your group? Don't you have a Facebook group? Can they join your group?
There is a Save Our. Oh, yes. They can just, what
was the name of that? Camp Constitution? Or you can go to.
Camp. And I put a lot of information about this subject on that. But also stop the UN Agenda 21. But there's a group in Ringe called Save Our Town. They have a Facebook page. And now they're watchdogs. And now they go to their town meetings, where mostly it's just the so-called the left goes to these meetings, and they can take over a town,
right?
Because most people are asleep at the switch,
and they are taking over town. So as Hal said, don't panic. Right? Knowledge is power. We always say knowledge is power. I am going to post this other link by the John Birch Society, which I've heard you mention before.
And you don't want to assume that people that are implementing this are two-headed monsters being controlled directly by George Soros.
They just don't understand.
They may be, but most likely they're not. They're mostly just well-intentioned people, true believers.
No, but so, for example, last night with the planning board person from Rockport, if they designate this as a heritage site or division or district, the town gets money every year, federal money. So you're looking at like $100,000 to a town with a population of less than 7,000 people. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And so that's what he said. So they're looking at it like, how can we give up this money?
You want to be able to deny government at any level getting more revenue, because they'll spend it and they'll want more.
Well, it's making bigger government, because what it will do, they'll hire somebody to be the Rockport commissioner of Dogtown.
And then that person will have to get pay raise. He'll want a staff. He'll want his own vehicle.
And that's making government bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
so you've listened to the Dianna Ploss Show with my guest today, Hal Shurtleff, knowledgeable on Agenda 21. and founder and director of Camp Constitution. You can find all of the links from today's show on the Dianna Ploss Facebook live stream. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you all.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. See you all next week. Bye-bye.